about this country and all what's happening around here, but you should see some other countries and what's happening there. I can guarantee that as long as we have people like you and children like her, we don't have to worry about anything. This country is very powerful, very powerful. But the people of this country may not be, because that's what happens when your family is so powerful, the members of the family will be a bit slack. But I feel that there is no need to worry about this country. This was not part of my speech. In fact, I have not made anything about my speech. I was thinking about what should I tell you about national security, because I have a different view about the whole concept. Before that, I must tell you, around 26 January on 2012, I was giving a speech about India in the auditorium of Houston University in Texas. I was quite thrilled, especially when I speak about India in other countries. I become very selfish and conceited, and I always think about there's no other country in this world like India. So obviously, I also went overboard that day in Houston University auditorium. And there were double the size of people sitting there from various countries. And I spoke a lot about India, even beyond what India is. We got the habit, especially Indians got the habit of elevating whatever we are telling. At the end of it, an American lady got up, very pretty lady, so that made me feel a bit okay. And she was very angry with me. She said, "Do you think that India is everything in this world?" And she started, she didn't stop. So that gave me time to think. And she finally concluded saying that if you think India is so big, India is so fine, good and powerful, what do you think about America? So it's just like asking, you were thinking about your wife, what about his wife, that kind of thing. Something came in my mind. I told her, "Ma'am, India is the world. Everything in this world is there in India. And what is not in India, you cannot see anywhere." As if I'm antagonizing her. And it is true, which I thought later on. But America has the whole world in it. This was my statement, which I keep quoting to myself, because from there something else I researched and found out, which I put in one of my books for the MBA students. What I meant was, if I am a travel agent in Mars, and some busy Martian comes to my office and says, "Look, I want to go to planet Earth, but I don't have the time to see the entire planet. Can you plan a trip for me?" I will say, "Then you go and visit India. It's as good as seeing the whole planet." But when I say America, let me tell you, gentlemen, if the United Nations holds a referendum to the world 7.6 billion population, where would you like to go and settle? Choose your country, kind of a referendum. Where do you think people will go? The United States. You see the mad rush for that, without knowing what it is. So what I meant was, the immigrant country is an immigrant country. Everybody goes there. And the localites have gone, vanished. Buffaloes were killed. The Indians are gone. But there also we have Indians. But India, as it is the world. That's not the only thing, but I want you to know when you ask these questions. In fact, I'm also answering some of the questions which you put across. We have people in North Sentinelese Islands whom we thought are cannibals. We also have the world's richest people in this country. What a scale, what a bandwidth. If that is so, we have to accept all these what you're talking about. We have to accept that we will see everything. Things can be as bad as anywhere else and as good as anywhere else in India. And it is for us to change it. But I feel that since I I've been dealing with Andaman Nicobar, and I know that they are not cannibals, but they are pretty bad shape. They won't allow you to enter. They have killed people. And we have gone there and checked, looked for the people in helicopters, but they won't allow you to land, and they will throw this javelins to us as if, they can be very good in javelin throw. Recently, somebody has been killed there, an American. Everybody says he was a missionary. But of course, I don't believe it. That you can ask me as a question at the end of this talk. So coming to a point, what I'm trying to put up here is national security. In fact, Mr. Farooq Khan has given a wonderful talk, and he was mentioning about the ground vision. He's very focused on the ground. He has told you exactly what is happening. I'm going to take you slightly elevated into a helicopter vision where the ground focus will not be as focused, but you may get a wider view, because that's based on my studies and my research and the way I have been performing in my career. I must thank General Colin Powell for this, because I was with him in Pentagon for quite some time, and that's where he told me to consolidate my views on national security. For me, national security is much more than security of the nation. Try to listen very carefully. I will go in a staccato fashion. I will shift from one to another without any link between. And also I want to remind you that this what I'm going to talk to you can be a PG course for 2 years on each subject. So there are many different terminologies which I may use if we have the time, but I will certainly try to finish within the time. So when you say national security, there are 2 words in it. Don't take it as a single word, but take it as a compound word. Now, if you look at that way, nation is different, security is different, but when you take national security, it's basically about the well-being of the people. Now, I'm going to cut across. National security is not the security of the nation alone, but it's much more than that. And this concept of national security was with the United States when it became in 1757 and things like that. But in 1789, a group of students, undergraduate students in Yale University, brought out this idea of national security is not just military security. It's not just rule of law. We have to think about economics, for example. They brought it out in that manner. And thereafter, the senators kept on talking about it. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, which I call micronization of the erstwhile Soviet Union into Russia and other parts, I don't like to call a country getting disintegrated. It's not a good way of dealing diplomatically. I say it's a micronization, and when you annex somebody or when somebody joins you, we call it macronization. That is quite rare nowadays. Nowadays, it's more on macronization. So national security as it is, I came down back from the United States and started researching on that, which was as advised by General Colin Powell, whom I admire quite a lot, and the way Americans are following it. But I found that Americans were also not following it exactly the way I thought it should be. So when I researched, I found that national security is an interesting concept, which is the well-being of the people. It's not like in Bhutan they say it is happiness. But no, I will not come to that, because that's not exactly the same. The well-being of the people, and all the complaints which we have today, or the questions which we have today, is about the lack of well-being for someone or the other. So when you take it up in that manner, my definition of national security is this. I have to read it out because I write all my books for my own reference, actually. The measurable state of the capability of a nation to overcome the multi-dimensional threats to the well-being of its people and its survival as a nation state by balancing all instruments of state policy through governance at any given point of time that can be indexed by computation, empirically or otherwise, and extendable to global security by variables external to it. It was a 2012 definition which is being followed in national defense universities and all, as one of the additions to many definitions of national security, which I may modify further because his research is continuing. I have written a book on this, which Ratan Tata has wanted to publish by Tata McGraw-Hill. But based on that, which is quite a few years back, I'm going to write a book on to the Springer, the publishers in Germany, on revisiting national security, where I will bring it out how we use national security as a measure and index it and even take away GDP out of it and see how, like a stock exchange variation comes, we can compare one country with another at any given time with respect to the National Security Index or NSI Index. This study I'm planning to do, and I'm planning to write this book for Springer, which will start today and end up next March 31st, because I want it to come out in 2020, which will be published by Springer Germany. And basically these are not normal books which everybody buys, these are research publications which others can use for furthering research. So coming down to national security, I will say that who will provide the well-being? That's another interesting thing. If you have to provide the well-being of national security to the people of a country, who will provide it? That naturally has to be the king, whoever is ruling it, or the father in the family, which is a formal human system, which is the smallest human system, and the nation is the largest human system, which is a formal one, unless we have United Nations as a global human system. So, who will provide it? That naturally has to be the government. But can the government provide national security? No. Because national security, what the government can provide is very minimum. Even if the government is perfect. I want you to know this. National security has to be provided by the people of that country to themselves through government. That means even a movie provides national security, well-being to you. Government cannot produce movies. An average movie about 1 million people sitting in various theaters at 3 hours provides well-being and the well-being for various people, what I call the spiritual security or apparent security. What you need is not what you need. You want more than that. We all need perceived security. This is Adler's theory. We all want more than what we have or what we get. Now, governments cannot provide that. And government can provide only a few items which I will be listing out and telling you subsequently. Rest of the things is what is provided by Shabarimala provides security, spiritual security, the well-being. And if a government tries to interfere in that, it cuts off. Actually, government is doing just opposite to that. I don't know how much you have got it, but now, what about the dimensions in which the governments have to perform? Emperor Akbar, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, of course he is not very great, they didn't have to worry about anything other than land. For them the water is only, just have a bridge, we'll cross it. But today the governments have to work in multiple dimensions, what we call in Sun Tzu's language, terrain specificity. We are land-clasping people. I've mentioned about this in one of our books in Integrated National Security. We live on land. We actually perch on those small rocks which is floating in the ocean. Quite a few of them, about 30% of that. But we cannot live anywhere else, but we have to use those dimensions, and the first one came the ocean. There are years. Ocean became a major dimension of the national security in BC 1250, 1250. I have used this period of the Trojan War for this particular assessment. Thereafter, airspace became a dimension in 1912. Thereafter came space in 1991, the fourth dimension. So we have land, ocean, air, and space. Then came cyberspace with an entirely different dimension. That came in 1995, and in 2000 came the sixth dimension, that is genome, genetics. All these six dimensions are entirely different from each other, but those people who cannot get into any of these things except stay on land will have to integrate them with respect to the national security. That means the national security of this little girl today, well-being of this girl is entirely different from my great-grandmother, where it was easy just to think about those small pieces of land around you. So I will not say Napoleon was great, I will not say Alexander was great, I will not say Akbar was great. They had a very small job to do. But today's governments have to really burn their kidneys to run the countries. They die early, but politicians never die early. That's a secret. Why? We'll talk later. Now, what do these people do in these six dimensions? They have to learn it. They have to study it. Cyber is a world. Genetics is a world which we haven't come across yet, except a few countries quietly doing it. I don't know how much we are doing it. Now, besides these six dimensions, there's going to be one more dimension according to me, which I'm studying, but it may not be correct to say that at this moment. I think it will come in 2040. The seventh dimension. If that is so, the governments have to watch out. All these dimensions, all these terrains is where the game is played. The game of national security is not played on land alone. It's played on these six dimensions and one which is likely to come in another 40 years from now. I do not know, I'm still studying it, perhaps I may put in my book, but now that's not the only thing. But then which are these elements of national security? Initially it was the physical security. Starting from Adam and Eve, it was physical. Cain and Abel, one stick killed the brother. That's what Bible says. From that time onwards, how do you have the national security concept? What are the elements? The students in Yale University, where they published the paper, they added, along with physical security, economic security should be taken into consideration in 1789. Thereafter, a couple of things more came up. In my studies and in my research, I have given this, in year 2000, 2000, I have given 15 elements which are chronologically put in detail. The first one, obviously, is about war. Each of these subjects can be a separate research book published or a separate course if you wanted to have it in universities. In fact, one of the universities even asked me about it, but I said it's too early for me to say this. The first one, obviously, is physical security, where you get attacked by somebody external to you. That is what I have given the name military security. Remember, all these things are identified with respect to certain conditions, and you can use them as a mathematical model, either in metrics and determinants or something like that, and work on it and make proper mathematical models on that. In military security, ultimately what I am concluding is, if there is an antithesis to war, it is war itself. There can't be any time without war in this world, as long as we live. The first war was, I heard it was for the fire. That was 30,000 years ago or something. I don't remember exactly. I have to check up my own book, where we have brought out studies on this. And when you look up the Trojan War, where Helen of Troy has been kidnapped, taken away to Troy, and Agamemnon and all these people have gone to rescue her and get her back. Have you heard this story, Helen of Troy? Do you think they have gone with 1,000 ships to get the Helen back? And that too after 10 years? He has just copied from Ramayana, because of our connection with them. Homer has copied it from Ramayana blindly, but made into a fantasy story like my brother writes. Jago writes a lot of fantasy stories from real things. He has gone to Troy from all the way from his place with 1,000 ships and a coalition armed forces, Achilles and all these people, to get tin, T-I-N, tin. Why? because that is the Bronze Age. He didn't have tin. They didn't have tin in that country, like the way Mr. Bush would have gone for oil to Iraq. It's going on even today. War for resources. It's going on. What do you think is happening in any place? Resources. Either block it, deny resources to somebody. In fact, I have attended a meeting with the NATO in Singapore sometime back after my retirement. Certain people, the NATO wanted to know, how do we deny resources to other countries? Simple. Now, when you are having drugs, opium in Afghanistan, if you can control movement of acetyl anhydride from other part of the world to Afghanistan, Iran, Afghanistan, that border, Pakistan border, if I can deny acetyl anhydride, which is a resource, raw material for making heroin, naturally I can block them. So there are many ways you can block resources. So resources is one of the main cause for the war. Why did Saddam Hussein invade Iran? Why did Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait? Or anybody for that matter? How did Genghis Khan come to India? Why India became a victim of everything? All the wars, because we had everything here. You became a threat attractor. That's one thing which I will be explaining to you later. So if I say the element one is military security, next one is economic security. I'm quoting this 1789 research thesis of Yale undergraduates. In economic security, I must tell you, this is my view, entire theory of economics, what you study, is wrong. Even that starting with a curve like supply and demand, nonsense, absolute nonsense. It's not based on supply and demand, because demand you can create. You can force somebody to buy something. I say that the money that passes through a million hands behaves in a million different ways. I won't be spending my 100 rupees the way he is going to spend his 100 rupees. They will have a different viewpoint. I remember in 7th standard I studied in Calicut St. Joseph's High School a lesson which says the journey of a rupee. It says how a rupee started from Reserve Bank, went around and round and round, and that's where I got this idea. Nobody spends the money in the same way. That is where the stockbrokers make money out of you or cheat you. Perhaps pickpockets take the money in a different way. So that's economic security, which I will study further. Then come the resource security. These are all chronologically laid down. Resource security, the government has to see that. And in resource, the principal threat for a resource security is from the people who uses the resource. That is where the principal threat comes. Then comes the border security, comes demographic security, disaster security, energy security, geostrategic security, food security, information security, health security, ethnic security, something which we don't know exactly. When I say ethnic security, I don't mean people of different religion or caste or creed or whatever we talk about it. We talk about a man different from another. You take LGBT, Q, and A. There is LGBTQ and A, isn't it? Now, why can't we look at from the ethnic security point of view about the people with different sexual preferences? And then agree, make everybody equal, kind of a thing. Why are we waiting for so many years to decide on what is to be done with them? That's where the national security comes in. Environmental security, then comes cyber security and genomic security, which may have further elements. Why I'm talking about these 15 elements is, that's how it is today. They're conditioned by various variables, which also I can prove it to you, but that's not the time. This is not the time for that. What is important about these elements is a government who is managing national security will have to balance these 15. But the problem is that you touch one, another will be affected. That's the problem. You have war, you spend money. The only country that made money out of war is the United States. So learn to make money out of war, then you balance both economic security. You make money out of it. So have your own weapons, your own system, manufacture, defense manufacture in your own country, export it. Because the worst three biggest crimes, what I call crimes tree, which works in tandem in transnational organized crime syndicates to them, which is everybody in the world is involved in that, together. Arms trafficking, drugs trafficking, and human trafficking. The Munambam incident, which you know, and we are coming to know about it now. The entire LTT umbrella, which was modeled in the terms of IRA, Irish Republican Army style, from where the arms came to them, is basically a cover-up for these three crimes. It's not for Elam. So many people are living, their average balance, the balance sheet profit was about 400 million in 1993. I know it because I was celebrating a New Year rave with NASA scientists, and there were some Sri Lankans there who were talking about it. So all these things which we see around the world will have either three of them or one of them as the main cause. And what we see is different, and we cannot go on that. Interpol will have the complete records. So when you look at resource security, etc., we must understand that there is a lot of other things happening around us, and without knowing that, we will not be able to handle it. When Munambam incident came up, I was called by the TV channels, and I can't talk to the TV channels the way I want to. One of the most difficult thing for me is not what to talk on the TV, but what not to tell them. That is the biggest problem. We are all service people, and we have been trained what not to talk, even if you are drunk. I'm glad you are laughing, some of you, because that's what I wanted. So, talking about certain things is not possible. Hiding certain things is more important than talking everything out. But so, depending upon the audience, you have to do that. So, this Munambam incident, the whole Kerala came to know only now. This has been going on for the last 25, 30 years. From Patte Mari to many other things. Haven't been trafficking. Do you think a rich man who gets out of the country overnight, how do you think he's going? He's going and booking through IBBO or something for London ticket? No. He has his agents. He goes to the human trafficker. They charge you money accordingly, and they will take care of your travel, including packing your cases. This happened in 1750 when the French Revolution took place. When the French Revolution took place, all those the kings and queens wanted to escape to England, and they used human traffickers. They paid money to them, whatever chain they had, whatever diamonds they had paid to them. They somehow escaped to England. This is going on all the time. Human trafficking is a very dangerous thing, and I know quite a few of our very important Indian officials who are controlling these things, and they know what's happening around, but they cannot talk about it. Arms, drugs, and human trafficking, which will continue. And what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is slightly different from arms trafficking. Human smuggling is also part of it, where you allow a person to go or carry him with his own permission. Others you coerce or you cheat and go, and that's trafficking called. So these are the things which we have to know about the elements of national security and the terrains of national security. And one other thing which I want to tell you is the threats. We use the word threats very frequently. It's a threat to us. But what is a threat? A threat can be seen mathematically as a cube, threat matrix cube, which has got 8 dimensions. A threat can be external or internal. A threat can be covert or overt. A threat can be direct or indirect. And a threat will catch the target, which is threat attractive. Very simple. I keep a birthday cake here. In this room, if you keep a birthday cake, I can bet a fly will come and sit on it. And you don't know from where the fly came. The fly is the threat. In military, when I go with my ships, when I want to shoot down a missile, I call this as the target, but actually that missile is the threat. So here in this principle, I find the fly is coming from somewhere and sitting on the birthday cake. The cake is the target. Cake is threat attractive. A lady who walks alone in Ernakulam roads after 12 o'clock is threat attraction. And her threat attraction increases with respect to her age. And the threat attraction increases with respect to the gold chain she is wearing. So these things are very important even in anything what you're dealing with. Even if I'm doing business, I have threat from my adversary, my competitor. So threat can be identified and analyzed by what I call a fly box approach in 3-dimensional. One, two things we have to know. One, where is the threat vis-a-vis the target? Relative position. Fly will come, fly will go back. And threat happens to that particular birthday cake not when the fly sits there. When the fly got the hint of it. Like the mosquito coming to you when you're sitting outside in your parlor. When the threat starts from there, you got to stop it. Now, how do you protect or how do you handle this threat? Either you prevent it, cover the cake with a net or something, or preempt it, go and kill that fly when it starts. But if the fly sits there, you can do nothing about it, except mitigate the damage. You may look here and there and remove the small portion and take the fly away and serve the birthday cake. You can always use threat as an opportunity also. In fact, many governments have used threat and allowed it to happen so that they can use it as an opportunity. If I have somebody coming and attacking me, terrorists coming and attacking me, I will not name the place and government. I can certainly allow it to happen in spite of knowing that it is coming. Then I can do something else for which I will have the consensus of other countries. Pearl Harbor attack, many of the military men would have heard about it. Do you think the government didn't know? The government knew it. That's how the Americans could get into the war and sell their warships and become very, very rich. So it's left to you how do you use your threat and in the threat matrix cube. That's what we have to do. And the threat is hidden. My girlfriend will be taken away by some other boy in the college. We had a lot of problems. Before that person makes up his mind, I must know and decide whether to prevent or preempt or mitigate thereafter. Every one of us faces this every day, and every nation will face it every day. The world will face it, of course, jointly only when a meteor or asteroid comes to us. Like in the olden days, then we have the methods. So, threat has to be seen very carefully. Now, let me tell you another interesting thing about associated with threat. We take risk as part of threat. Risk is not threat. If you are doing business, you will know that. Risk is something which is entirely different, which you can hedge. And what about uncertainty? Is it risk? No, it's an entirely different concept. Uncertainty is what we call in war fog and friction. If I'm sending people on a surgical strike, my problem is not risk of the surgical strike. My problem is the uncertainty of the surgical strike. That's what happened to the Americans in Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs, or the Iranian hostage crisis. But Vietnam, uncertainty kills you. Risk is nothing, you can always hedge against it. Threat is nothing, you can always plan for it. Uncertainty management is the most difficult thing. But what I would like to tell you here is, in national security, all these matters are very, very important. And this is what the governments have to see. But how do they see it depends entirely on the government. And there are many laws that comes into it. One is the law of invariance. That means what Alexander faced in a war, we will face in a war today. What Genghis Khan faced, we may face it today. Everything will happen, not in a cyclic model, because cyclic model is not possible. No cycle, no circle is not a proper mathematical thing, because nothing can reverse. Everything goes forward. A circle is better expressed as a sine curve. So we have to know. So what will happen to India in the future? It will be exactly the way it was happening in the past. So if you are surviving, we will survive. That's what I wanted to say. And this is where I want you to know a very important thing, which I thought many times discussed and published and it has been refereed, it has been seen, it has been reviewed. What I found was, which many people may not agree with me initially, not Indians may agree, others may not agree, that I have said that India is the longest surviving human continuum, which was not interrupted. So far, in spite of everything that could happen in the world under the law of invariance, has happened to India. This gives me a lot of hope. What I mean to say is India still remains as India. Not Egypt, not Greece, not Rome. If you take the United States, yes, it is a continuum. It's about 300 years old. But we are so old that we don't know when we started. In spite of all those things happen, there is no permanent default, permanent interruption, I will say. So I don't think we have to worry too much about it. But I also have to worry about it because any government that is going to come in power in future can break this continuum deliberately. Because today people are wiser, more intelligent, even in committing criminal activities. What happens if somebody changes the constitution of India? Entirely different. This is one of the best constitutions we have. In fact, I will say this is in the existing constitutions, it's a good constitution. How India will be interrupted, how India will be broken, then its continuum will be lost. So what we have to see are the governments that will maintain this continuum. That's what we have to see when we teach children in school. We have not been broken away by British invasion or any of those people, colonization or any of those things. I didn't give much weightage for this colonization things and all. It's all minor things. We don't have time to think about it. These are not things which a busy executive should think about. But we have to work hard, we have to work faster, we have to work at lightning speed if you have to catch up with others. For me, it is an interesting thing that I don't call a country superpower in national security regimen. I call a country a super state. Super state is the one where the national security index is very, very high and it cannot fall back. Well, I can say today super state can be the United States for various reasons because the well-being of the people in the United States is quite high. They feel comfortable. And when they feel comfortable, there is certain behavioral changes. From the behavioral changes of the people, you can make out what is the national security index. How do they feel it? A simple family who got a child, you want to put the child in school. It's not easy in India. You don't know where to put it. You have to go and meet the principal. At the time, principal will be very powerful. Putting a child in a school, taking leave to look after the aging mother. All these are matters of well-being. These are all connected with national security. Another thing which I want to tell you is that based on my studies, which is a nation actually? We have a lot of definition in the political science about nation, state, nation state, sovereign state, countries. The idea of sovereign state came up in 1648 through the Westphalian Treaty, which I'm sure that many of you will know. There was 30 years of war between Protestants and Catholics in Europe. And in that particular time, there was finally, at the end of the war, there was a treaty which said, okay, we won't fight anymore. And nobody won in that war. Protestants went their way, Catholics went in a different way. And from that time onwards, the first nation was born, that was Sweden. And Sweden, from onwards, we have the sovereign principle and we became a nation state as what we are today. In this particular case, we became a nation state or something in 1947. Why I say something is because nation state definition is slightly different for me. According to the present situation, how many countries are there in the world? If it's a question which we ask, nobody will be able to answer it. And it is not their fault. Because we don't know what it is. When I mean a country, what you mean a country can be different. So we will talk about the United Nations membership. 193 countries in the United Nations. But there is a country which is recognized by everybody called Holy See, Vatican City. It's not a member of the United Nations. So you take one more, add that. Then you have Palestine, which has got observer position. So when you look in that manner, according to me, when I studied in 2008 in Japan, we analyzed 278 countries or human systems or formal human systems, or what I call geopolitical entities which deserve to be governed independently, which has got people. Today, in fact, when I was studying it still, it is about 279. It's increasing. That means there is micronization taking place. South Sudan is one of them, Kosovo. Now, many countries may not agree. But how does a country become a country? You take the CIA's fact book, which is the intelligence report to the President of the United States. Some of them are hidden, and what is in the open source, if you check up, they have a very different list. But basically, according to me, there are 279 global entities in the world, including Antarctica, which is a global commons, but still colonized in a different mode, like the moon is going to be colonized in a different mode. They are universal commons and this is global commons. I will say Mars is universal commons because as long as nobody is there around us in this universe, then we can call it a global commons. But somebody takes claim tomorrow from Pluto, we cannot do that. But this is how we have to see nations in the national security regime. 279 entities, some of them are actually protectorates of other countries, but today they call them as territories. Do you know that in Indian Ocean, when we talk about Indian Ocean, the United States, the UK, as well as France qualifies to become a state of the Indian Ocean because they got their properties here. You will find Americans all around, from Arctic to all other places, like Guam in Philippines is an American territory. They're American citizens. So when you look at that way, there are 279 geopolitical entities for which there are people in those countries and their well-being and their national security is the concern of their respective governments, whoever they may be. When I use the word protectorate in a Singapore meeting, an Australian diplomat objected to that because Australia has got Cocos Islands and things in the Pacific. He said, so we don't anymore call it protectorate, we feel a bit uneasy as we are colonizers. I said, okay, fine, I will change it into territories of the Australian territory, etc. Kerguelen Islands, all kind of things. So we must know that there are 279 entities as of today, according to my studies, which is slightly plus or minus few because some of the countries don't recognize other countries. Taiwan, for example, China may not recognize. Americans don't recognize. But Taiwan, we got an embassy, I think so. And so those countries we have to see from the study point of view as the nations of the national security. So when you make or draft law, para 2 of the Act will normally talk about the definitions of words which are used in that Act. So that particular definition only applies to that Act. So when I say nation, you must understand nation and national security are the geopolitical entities existing at that time. But there are other definitions for nation also. So these are the few points which I wanted to put up to you, and I think I've already taken enough time.